Hey guys, I'm Lou, and in today's video I am going to be reviewing Killing Eve Die For Me by Luke Jennings and telling fans of the TV show to go and pick this book up. It's also called Killing Eve Endgame. This is the third and I think final book in this series. I could be wrong, but as of April 2020 I couldn't find any information on any sequels, and seeing as the title is literally called Endgame, I have a feeling that this could be the end of the series. I am going to try and keep this review as spoiler free as possible, but if you would like to be safe and stay away from spoilers, then I would recommend clicking off this video. Please also consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. The summary of the book is as follows. As Villanelle returns to face her childhood demons and the Russian winter, Eve finds herself on the run from the 12, who want her dead. As the action moves between London to St. Petersburg, and Eve and Villanelle finally admit their mutual erotic obsession, the chess game approaches its lethal, unforgettable conclusion. This book killed me. It wasn't killing Eve, it was killing Lou. This book was the gift that kept on giving. If you are a fan of the TV series, then you absolutely have to read this series specifically for this book. It provides you everything that you wanted and more if you're a fan of Eve and Villanelle getting together. It's really hard to explain why you should read this book if you're a fan of the series without spoiling it. But let's just say it's very, very gay and it's great. 25 minutes into this audiobook and I felt like I had to go to church. To be fair, the summary of this book does say that Eve and Villanelle finally admit their mutual erotic obsession, and boy do they do, PG-18 style. I would say that the reason why I like this book and this series is completely based on the relationship between Eve and Villanelle, and this book provided the most development in that respect. However, in every other aspect of this book, minus the LGBT plus representation, it's lacking depth. The other LGBT plus representation in this book, apart from Eve and Villanelle, also features another female-female coupling and a person who realizes that they're non-binary and asks people around them to use the right pronouns. That person also has a new name and asks people to stop calling them by their dead name. I felt like having a non-binary character in this book was very important. It was actually the first time that I read a book with a non-binary character. I do own books featuring non-binary characters, but this just happened to be the first book which I ended up reading. However, I do think that the LGBT plus representation is more of a negative one and can be seen as problematic. Also, by the way, the main reason why I'm keeping a character who is non-binary a secret is because it could be a spoiler if I tell you who that person is. When the character reveals that they're non-binary, they have to constantly tell people to refer to themselves as they or them, and it's to the same people as well. It's not like they're constantly meeting new people, it's the same people, they're just refusing to use the right pronouns. I felt like it was quite demeaning. I think in the beginning, when people are getting used to using the right pronouns, there's bound to be mistakes until it becomes secondhand nature. However, in this book, I felt like it was almost seen like it was a joke, as they were constantly making mistakes without making it seem like they were actively trying in using the right pronouns. I think it was Eve who was the only person to adhere to the person's requests, but I also could be wrong because I don't specifically remember Eve saying they, them, as I was listening to the book over reading it, so it is harder for me to remember and identify what Eve exactly did, but I do remember Eve using their new name and not their dead name. In addition, for the other female-female couple and the non-binary person, I felt like they fall into the trap of like older LGBT plus stories, as in, you know, like death happening. You can put this to the world that the characters are in. Living a life with assassins and espionage probably means that you have a higher chance of meeting your death faster, but I still would have liked to have seen less gay people die. In regards to the plot of this book, I do feel like it was the strongest one in the series. The plot picks up from where book 2 ends. And this is where Eve and Villanelle start to fully interact. You also do have a recap in the beginning of this book, which proved to be very useful to me, as I did start to forget what actually happened in the books, as I personally felt like the books weren't memorable like the other books in the series. But I also started watching the 3rd series of Killing Eve, and whilst the stories are completely different, the characters are completely different, it can still get jumbled up in my mind. If you have been watching season 3, then I do want to say that a character that was introduced in the first episode of season 3 is also introduced in this book. The main reason why I felt like the plot in this book was better than the other books is because of Eve and Villanelle interacting. That is all I ever wanted. It wasn't because the general storyline was good. I felt like the journey that Eve and Villanelle was going on was very average and very like meh. But what I liked was seeing them interact and getting to know each other, and in my mind it made up for the lack of interesting plot. I also predicted the twist at the end of the book, so I wasn't surprised when the twist was revealed. In regards to the characters, I felt like Eve went through the most development in this book. I felt like she started to become more like Villanelle, which I did like, but I also felt like she was losing a key part of her character. She started to feel less like the Eve that we know, but it is also sort of understandable seeing as the position that she was in at the end of book 2 and beginning of this book. She is literally on the run, and she only has Villanelle as company, as support. Villanelle is the only person she can depend on. I would not like to be in that situation. I think I would constantly feel scared and tense, and I probably would be like Eve. I wouldn't be surprised if like Eve had some like Stockholm syndrome, but I did feel like as the book went on, Eve essentially became Villanelle's trophy wife and stopped being herself along the way. Villanelle was the same as she always was. I feel like she is like the most reliable and predictable character, even though she is neither of those things. You can sort of guess how she reacts to things, and she does continue to emotionally manipulate Eve in this book, and I feel like this book is where it becomes especially more problematic. And there were like numerous instances where Eve would avoid Villanelle when Villanelle was upset, and she would walk on like eggshells, and Villanelle would intentionally do things to upset Eve. So it's not like Villanelle becomes an angel, she is the same person as she always was. So this book does go into a more grey area, because it's like you do ship Eve and Villanelle, but it's also a bit like it's clearly not healthy. Overall, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. The reason why I gave this book and all the other books in the series 3 out of 5 stars is because there are things which the book series lacks. And I do feel like a lot of my affection of this series comes from my love of the TV series. If I didn't love or even like the TV series, then I would not have picked up these books, because they don't sound appealing to me and they aren't to my typical taste. In general, I don't enjoy adult spy thriller books. They rarely get higher than a 3 out of 5 star read for me. So me giving this entire series essentially 3 out of 5 stars meets my typical rating of this genre. And now to talk about specifics as to why I gave this series 3 out of 5 stars. One of the main reasons is because the books are so short. It's really good for finishing books at fast speeds, to feel a sense of accomplishment, to increase your Goodreads goal. But for this series, it does mean that you're not actually spending a lot of time in this world, and it did lead to me struggling to connect to the plot and the characters. This series feels very surface level, and it does try to focus on the main storyline, the characters of Eve and Villanelle, as well as their growing relationship. And whilst I did enjoy all those things, I felt like there were things missing in this series for me to rate it higher than 3 out of 5 stars. Also, knowing that I wouldn't pick up this series without the TV show, and that the TV show is the main reason why I love this series so much, makes me realise that the books are lacking in some things which the TV series is not. In addition, beyond Eve and Villanelle, I did not care about a single thing. I did not have any emotional connections to anything else. I did not care if they lived or died. I felt like that was probably intended by the author, but it did leave me feeling cold about everything else in this book. I did enjoy this book, and I would specifically recommend this book to fans of the TV series, as this book does read like fan fiction. That's how much the plot of this book fulfills the reader's desires. However, I do feel like if you're not a fan of the TV series, then you would end up feeling disappointed in this book and this series as a whole. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye!